Hi everyone, and welcome to another Clip Studio Paint tutorial. Today we're going to talk about fonts for comics and how to make speech bubbles. So let's start with that so we have something to work on. You can find it here in the side tool menu. The keyboard shortcut seems to be T. You can select the colors from here. I've selected the classical white and black. Of course you can have some variations on that by changing the colors. There we go, and I have now a green outline and a black color inside. If you want to add the tail, you go here to the subtool menu and you click on balloon tail, and it will make one automatically for you. As you can see, you don't need to erase or add anything. And of course, if you want a speech bubble, you can do so here. You can change a lot of things about this, but for now we're just gonna stick to the basics so that I can explain about fonts. So let me write here my text, and I want it black. When you want to select something, Control A, and that is how you select everything within that compound that you are in. And this is where some of the features in Clip Studio Paint get a bit interesting. It doesn't really fit my workflow, but it might be very interesting for you guys. So for example, here you go to the font that you have, and you can select all fonts to have all of them, or you can select to have just the ones that I want. So for example, you can make a list of fonts that you prefer. For example, here I made a list, my comics, and I think I can make another list. There we go, new list. And let's select just these weird three ones. I click OK, and now when we go to font here on our left, I click on it and I can select now the list that I want. So I want all fonts, the new list, just the ones with the weird fonts. Oops. Or I can select my comics where I have the ones that I've selected previously. Okay. And of course you go here to correct line, and now you can adjust let's say this speech bubble. There we go, and of course you have correct width and thickness and all of that I will cover in a future video. I have the list of all of your requests. Please continue to leave me comments or contact me in direct mail and let me know what you guys are struggling with so that I can make some new tutorials for you. Okay, let's see. So now I want to talk to you guys about what people recommend that you have as fonts for your comic books in the Western world, and as far as I can tell in Japan as well, in mangas. Generally a font like Back Issues BB, for example, this is a free version for non-commercial use or something like that. I downloaded this font just to show you guys. There are different types of fonts that look like this. Some of them are free, some of them are only free for non-commercial use, some of them are free for whatever you want to do. Just look and see what is available in your country, because as always some websites might be blocked or not, or stuff like that. And I personally do not like this font at all. I'm gonna show you. Let's see, comic books. So this is generally the kind of font that you find in comics books here in the West. Let me say comic book speech bubbles. doesn't want to show me with text. But you can search for these as well. You can look for more modern ones as well, and it's that classic type of font that you find in pretty much all of them. It is the standard. I personally find it very hard to read and very annoying, and I don't like the fact that it's all caps. You don't have lowercase, and to me it just seems like it's always yelling or being aggressive. It's too thick, it's too big, it can be confusing. Like for example, I like to use 12 points size for my fonts, as you've seen in my previous video, and this one, as you can see, it's like 30% longer, bigger, and that generally affects the space that I have available to write my text for my comics. I generally prefer to have some space left so that I can show the background, because I have some other things happening in the background. Like this map is pretty important, showing some stuff. Here I have the news, and I just don't want to put a separate panel for that just to show that, oh, there's something happening on the news. I don't want to attract too much attention to that. I still want to have it like, oh, it's in the background, and only maybe some readers that pay attention will know that there's something happening in the timeline. These cats are from the future, so there's something bad happening back home. They have the news on. I wouldn't want to put a separate panel for that, and so that's one issue that I don't like. This one, they're generally occupy much more space. They're all caps, therefore I don't have it. When I want a character to be yelling, I only have available to make it either the text bigger or use bold. I generally prefer, because I grew up with the internet, when you write in all caps, for me it seems like you're yelling. And I personally don't like that. I prefer it to be with lower and uppercase, just because I feel that it gives me more range to have the characters express themselves. Now, so that's why I chose Cosmic Sans. I think it's too similar to some people to Comic Sans, so they're like have this aversion. Oh my God, you're not professional if you're using a font that is even remotely similar to Comic Sans, because Comic Sans is the Antichrist for some comic book makers. So I had people try to help me by telling me that I need to use the classical font and not whatever I want. So, I think they're well-meaning. It's just that I find it a lot easier to read this font than that font. I like fonts that are kind of simple, straightforward, with rounded edges. So there are plenty of more fonts out there that might suit that need. Of course, they don't have this wobbliness of comic book fonts, and some people might have an aversion to that because it's not the stuff that they're used to. So have that in mind when you do choose your fonts to make your comic books. Another font that I use is SF Comic Script. I'm not very familiar with fonts and what the SF and the sans stand for. I read about it at some point, but I completely forgot. But these are like serif and sans. These are family of fonts, and there are websites that will kind of pair up fonts that are widely available or come with your computer, your Windows or stuff like that, and they'll like give you examples of things that work together. I think I still have that link somewhere. Nope, no, I don't have it anymore on hand, but something about typography was the website, and it gives you recommendations of different types of fonts that work together. The list is pretty small, so it's generally not gonna cover comic books, but you know, try it out, see maybe you get some ideas if you don't want to use the standard types of fonts for comics. And I also like to use a lot of color in my comics for the font. Usually that is not done, as you've seen, it's always simple black. Maybe they'll change the white to yellow, but that's as diverse as they're gonna get in classical and standard comics that you find generally in Comixology or DC or Marvel or stuff like that. Is generally when you go in the indie realm that you start to find people experimenting with this and trying out new things. Now, the reason that I like to use color is because I love foreshadowing in every story. I love it when you go back and read the story and you're like, oh, yeah, that now I get it. Now I see. Oh, that was nice. That was a bit of foreshadowing. So, because I enjoy that so much, and I really like it when I have something that I've enjoyed and I go back and watch it and I discover new things about something that I already read. To me, that's always very entertaining and awesome. So, I try to do that as well in my work. And for example, here, as you can see, the cat is talking to a cat lady. She has a font here that some people have complained that it's hard to read, but they've been so few. And then when I asked the other people that haven't complained if they had an issue, they said no, it was fine. So, um, there are some people that do have some certain difficulty reading, so only some fonts will appeal to them, and it's not just the dyslexics. There are many disorders with that, so you can have that in mind. Maybe that font covers up a wider range of people. It does not cover me. I really don't like this font. It's difficult for me to read. So yeah. So you can see she has this type of font and it is red. So later on when we meet another character, we can see that she has the same type of font when she speaks, but the color is different. It is a purple color, it's no longer the red color. And then later on in the story, we find out that it was the first cat lady dressed up as the old woman. And I kept the font style throughout because I generally associate the font style with the personality of the character speaking, and the color I associate it with either the mood or superficial things. So the font is gonna always stay the same, but the color may change if the character is in disguise. And what happened was that the cats, they have a robot to kind of disguise themselves to go around and do their job as time police. Unfortunately, they're kind of underfunded, as policemen always are, and their robot broke down. So they had a friend help them out and to do some of the job. And she had a hologram suit, and then she could disguise herself as the person, the neighbor that they have as their cover up, their secret identity as the old woman. So yeah, I this is her color and this is her font. And then when she went undercover for the cats to help them out, the color changed to purple, which is the color of the robot, but the font stayed the same. And then we have the big reveal, it was her all along. And now her color returned to the normal one, and the font has been the constant throughout. So yeah, this is how I like to use fonts to help with the characterization of the characters that I have in my comic books. I use this as a tool for much more than it seems to be generally used. And of course, I do use italic and bold to put accents on different words. That is done as well in comics usually. And I use the comic script for when there's a sound like something's got knocked off, or um, I don't know, let's see, knocking on the door or other sounds like that. For example, this cat is working and you hear pow, bang, clunk. So that is for what I like to use the comic script. So yeah, that was it. Sorry if the video was a bit too long. I try to cover a wide range of topics. Generally, what you it's a good idea to start with is what is generally the standard in the industry, and you kind of learn what works and doesn't work for you. Generally, if this has been the font that everybody has fallen on agreement that is the best font, it probably, like I said, covers a wider range of people and whatever issues they have in reading. Might be easier on the eyes if you read a lot. Depending on the devices, like are you reading on a desktop, are you reading on a mobile, are you reading on a page? But this has been my choice, just because I like more flexibility in how the characters express themselves. I can play around with foreshadowing and adding more information to my stories. For like this stuff is probably gonna go over the heads a lot of people, but those that are big fans and appreciate these nuggets and pay attention to my comics, I think they will enjoy this a lot, and hopefully they found it fun. And oh, before I go, I wanted to show you guys something. Black Brick Road. It is a comic that I like the colors of, and I like what they did with the speech bubbles. As you can see, because of the color palette and how the characters are, you can play around a lot with this and kind of show different colors, different fonts. Generally, if you're gonna print this on paper, it is not recommended. The color gamut that you have available for paper is smaller than digital, so a lot of that detail is gonna get lost depending on how well the printing devices are and how well they can print that detail. Generally, the black is gonna bleed out into the text and make it hard to read, especially if it's not a great deal of contrast. Like white and black have a high degree of contrast, so there's no problem. But when you have black and purple like this and you want to print it and the font is really skinny, that black is gonna bleed out into your text and be really hard to read. So this works very well for digital, and it looks amazing. It's so pretty. I love how this comic looks. But once you start printing this on paper, it's gonna be even darker and it's gonna get a bit muddled if you don't have high quality printing access, and that's gonna be more expensive. Therefore, the comic is gonna be more expensive. Therefore, less people are gonna be able to read it. So yeah, I always have the print on paper nagging me in the background and influencing my decisions, because I think maybe at some point I will print it on paper and then I'll have some problems. So yeah, If you're publishing just digitally, you're a lot more free to experiment and do a bunch of stuff. As always, start with small projects, maybe a 60-page comic, and then once you learn a few things, you can go into big series like hundreds and hundreds of pages, Naruto style. So yeah, thank you everybody for listening, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.